Hey guys, Matt here. This is kind of like a weird sort of consolation video slash apology from me. I just got done watching the majority of the most recent Council Forcecast episode, which was released on Riddy Force channel. I don't know what happened on my end exactly, but I had a really spotty connection, apparently, the day that we recorded all of that. So my portions in that video are extremely difficult to understand. They're just absolutely unbearable. They're terrible. I feel like I lowered the quality of the entire episode. I brought down the whole presentation. Hopefully you guys will still enjoy the rest of the episode, regardless, for the sake of the other guys and what they contributed, and they didn't have any egregious technical difficulties like I did. So I just wanted to say, first and foremost, sorry about that. If it's tough to work through, if you can't stand me in that video, I take no offense. I couldn't stand myself listening to that. It was absolutely embarrassing. I'll try to work on a fix for next time. Anyway, because my portions were so often unintelligible, I thought I'd give a quick, very belated review of Star Wars The Force Awakens, just because I've been asked to by a few people since the film premiered. Now, as a big Expanded Universe fan, I'm sure a lot of you know, or probably think you know which way I lean on this. And it is a film that I'm conflicted over. The plot confounded me. I feel it made too many callbacks to the original two films, or at least it did so a bit too readily. The movie felt very self-aware and did not preserve the air of mystery and drama that I think other films in the saga have achieved to some level or another. To some extent, even the prequels, I think, did a better job of setting out groundwork and building up world building, I suppose, setting up some of the lore to be explored. Perhaps not intentionally at all, but that's the way that it worked. In this film, it felt like they were recoiling away from anything and everything that had to do with the Phantom Menace, including politics. And I think this movie really needed more of that, more establishment of the setting. The tone wasn't ruined in any way, but the pacing, for me, was a bit mangled. I wanted to have more time with each of the new characters. I wanted to get to know the characters before they're all whisked off onto this crazy adventure. If the movie had had just a bit of a slower start, perhaps an additional 25 to 30 minutes in the running time, I think I would probably think a great deal more of this movie than I do at the moment. And I have only seen it the one time. Maybe there's a few things I missed, maybe there are more details to be found, but as it stands, the pacing, the structure of the plot, I think they were serviceable. That's the highest I can go, like on the totem between like bad and good. They were serviceable. I'm looking through a few notes here. Sorry for the unrefined nature of this. This is just something I'm doing on the spot as a response to just the shit quality of my recordings in that episode. Having said that, I would probably have to say I definitely recommend the movie. I imagine all of you guys have seen it at this point anyway, but whatever, just for the sake of completionism, I do recommend the movie, and I want to confirm I did have a fun time. This is not like a depressing experience so much as it's just not as fulfilling as I wanted it to be. The characters especially did a lot to offset the gripes that I have with the plot. Very fun characters, very lively characters. Finn was the big standout. He came off a bit too buffoonish for me, or at least I thought he had the potential to do so very quickly, but having said that, he did grow on me over time, big time. He's also involved in one of my absolute favorite exchanges during the entirety of the film, where he and Han Solo are getting ready to storm the bad guy's lair, and it just seems like this suicide mission, and he just goes forward with like this blind optimism, just going, "Come on, you and me, Solo. We'll use the Force." And Han's just like, "Sit down, son. That's not how the Force works." You know, it's a great moment in a movie. I just really enjoyed it. He's a fantastic character. He's not perfect. His early appearance in the movie, I was a bit skeptical, but as time went on, he quickly became one of my favorite of the new additions. Absolutely wonderful character. Poe Dameron, I feel like he was a bit of a misused character, but a very lively and likable one all the same. Liked him a lot. I want to see more of him. I know that we are going to see more of him, obviously. But in the context of this singular movie, he just... If you've seen the movie, you probably already know what I'm talking about. It's not quite enough to be likable. You also have to make sense in the context of the story. Otherwise, the character's purpose comes into question. There were just a few too many unanswered questions involved with Poe, but he's a very enjoyable, charming, charismatic character, very lively character, wonderful addition in the context of adding depth and vibrance and engagement, you know, if I'm using any of these words properly. Moving on. Then we have Rey next on the list, with the exception of one singular scene, which we talk about in the Forcecast episode. I liked Rey quite a lot, and I particularly enjoyed the scenes that provided insight into her background and her potential for growth. Specifically, there's a scene where her mind is being probed, and she has a moment where she's able to push back and sort of reciprocate or retaliate with the same effect. And also she has another moment where she comes into contact with a presumed family heirloom that grants her a Force vision that I thought was definitely one of my favorite moments in the film. She is a bit of a Mary Sue in some ways, kind of a bipolar relationship with this character that I'm having so far, but I did like her as a person quite a lot, and I thought her reactions to a lot of what was happening around her made her believable enough for me to overlook how easily some things came to her. She may not have felt like she earned everything that she was able to accomplish, but I did enjoy her presence quite a bit, and I want to learn more about her past for sure, and I'm eager to see where her story goes. And I was able to, like I said, overlook her Mary Sue-like qualities, not all the time, but a good deal of the time, because of the actress's portrayal of the character, which I did find believable. I'm not going to talk about Kylo Ren here. We talk about him quite a lot in the Forcecast episode, and also because I'm trying to be positive here. Same goes for Supreme Leader Snoke. As for the returning cast, Anthony Daniels and Peter Mayhew delivered very brief but very wonderfully nostalgic, charming moments. While quite a few people have been quick to point out the dubious quality of Carrie Fisher's performance, it was actually better than what I was expecting it to be quite honest with you. Considering what her off-camera or off-set demeanor has been lately in most of her recent interviews. And also, how much of it is really her fault, how much is due to age or her lifestyle. It's kind of like, it's just not fun. It's not fair to pick on her. I think she's doing the best she can with what she's got, so there's that. Still a spotty performance, but hey, whatever. I'm trying to be fair. As for Harrison Ford, he's the man of the hour as far as I'm concerned. In many ways, this is his film. And as far as I'm concerned, well, let me just back up. I was very concerned about him in the lead up to the release of this movie. You hear stories about how he crashed his plane to a golf course or something. He's broken his ankle. He's geriatric actor here. He's slowing down. And if you've seen Ender's Game, that sleep-inducing performance, I had concerns about where Han Solo was going to go in this time around, and I was completely wrong. Harrison Ford brought his A game. This was absolutely just a great way to bring the character back into the spotlight. Very valuable addition to the cast, and as far as I'm concerned, like, he really knocked this one out of the park. So the movie is worth seeing just for him alone, in my completely honest opinion. And the character himself isn't written entirely perfectly, but the actor's portrayal is spot on. And even the character's problems, it's not problems with the character or the character's motivations so much as, again, the pacing, the nature of the plot itself. Nothing the character does or says is out of place so much as moments just aren't given enough room to breathe. And that's what I keep coming back to. That's my big problem with this movie. I just, you think back to the classic Star Wars, like the original Star Wars, when Luke is staring out at the twin sunset and the music swells, and like, that's just like such a classic moment, so heartfelt, so meaningful. This movie needed that. This movie needed build-up. This movie needed more time to just sit and invest and let the characters process what the hell is happening around them. And there are a few issues where I wanted more of that, where Han was concerned, and I didn't get that, so it wasn't an entirely fulfilling experience. But the actor's portrayal, Harrison Ford, rock on, spot on, great stuff. Then we come to Luke. I'm just hoping that the writers, the director, whatever, whoever's in charge, steps up their game with Luke in the next episode. I don't have anything to say about Luke just yet, which is kind of depressing in and of itself. Now, next on the list, we're kind of done with characters. There's many other characters that are smaller in nature. Some I liked, some I didn't like so much. We cover all of that in the actual Forcecast episode itself, or at least the others do, even though my responses are mangled and difficult to make out for, like, I would say probably 65 to 70% of the time that I spend talking. Actually, in reverse, I'd say like 30 to 35% of the time I spend talking, it's completely garbled, and I don't think you understand what I'll say. So really, I'm just trying to clear up my thoughts in like a broader scope. But the other guys will flesh out all the details and spoilery events that there are in the context of that Forcecast episode, which again is on Reedy Force channel. So wrapping up my thoughts here. The story of this film is at once super simplistic and also underdeveloped. Like I said, it just doesn't breathe correctly. It doesn't feel realistic. It doesn't feel as impactful as I want it to. Well, I don't think that there are many scenes where there's a big, gigantic problem, or rather, I don't think many of the scenes were poorly produced or rendered improperly. Many of those scenes where there's nothing wrong with the scene itself seemed as though they came too soon, or without sufficient build-up. This frenetic pacing style, the lack of breathing room, gave the movie the tone of a fan film, to be perfectly honest with you, which fan films generally work with a very limited time frame, and so you kind of need to have that. You kind of come to expect that sort of unrefined, sort of rushed quality, because they're trying to get to the meat of their story as quickly as they can, and they don't really take all of them. They're not afforded all the time to flesh out the character bits and the multitude of tiny little, all the little minutia that makes a film inspiring, unforgettable, charming, something you want to return to even though you already know what's going to happen. I don't have that with this movie yet, and I'm not sure that I will. I'm not optimistic that I will either. The movie just felt like a very, very good-looking, very expensive fan film. I had fun, but the movie just doesn't have the gravitas or the impact, the wonder and excitement that I look for, not just in a Star Wars movie, but in a Star Wars experience, whether we're talking about a book, a comic, a video game, whatever. The great Star Wars works all have that combination of qualities, and I just don't have all of those things in equal measure with this movie, the way that I hoped I would. It's not to say that it's a complete waste of time at all, and I certainly am holding it to a higher standard because it's Star Wars and I want to like it so much, and I love this franchise. It's so near and dear to my heart. But I can't just put a stamp of approval just because it's Star Wars. I can't like it just for the sake of it being Star Wars, much as I may want to. It's a movie that just doesn't have the gravitas or impact that I want. Like I've said, that's the big thing, and it does have a lot of the things that I look for in a Star Wars experience as well. Though it's not to say this is a complete wash. It's not. It has some dynamic characters, mostly good action, great comedy. The comedy and humor really. They're what elevates this. The material, like the substance of the plot, the writing, those things are kind of below average. The interaction between the characters, the humor, just the vibrance, that elevates this to something that I think is worth watching again, even though the substance of what's going on is kind of up in the air to me. Like I said, dynamic characters, mostly good action. I'm not a big fan of the way they choreographed the final lightsaber battle, or didn't choreograph it, however you want to phrase it. But it's not a scene that I hated by any stretch of the imagination. And the spaceship battles, I thought were mostly very good, especially the reintroduction of the Millennium Falcon. Wonderful sequence, probably my favorite of the action sequences in this film. Period. So I guess it's something that I think did a lot right, did quite a bit wrong as well, but I would never call it a heartless or soulless cash grab. That's not what it felt like. But it does feel aimless and rushed and entirely derivative of what we've all seen from the franchise before, in some manner or another, in some medium or another. As I am a huge fan of the expanded universe, the Star Wars Legends timeline is always going to come first for me, in my mind, in my heart. But I've tried as best I can to judge this film without that point of view in mind. I'm trying not to compare this to that or hold it to that standard, and I certainly don't expect them to work those stories into this. For the purposes of these films, I was willing to let go of this. I'm not judging the movie by that standard at all. All of the problems I have with respect to this film are things that I would have issues with whether I was a fan of the expanded universe or not. I promise. Ultimately, I do recommend the movie. I do. And I did have fun with the movie. But the more I thought about it, the less fulfilling the experience seemed to be. Ultimately, like I said, I do recommend it, and I certainly recommend going to see it in theaters. If you're going to see it with an audience. It's a very fun theater-going experience. It's definitely not what I hoped it would be. I probably will see it for a second time in about a week or so, just to try to reabsorb it, reprocess things. Maybe some things I didn't notice will become more clear upon a second viewing. I don't know. Maybe there's some things I missed. And also, another thing I'm curious to see what stands up on its own is I'm eager to listen to the film's soundtrack. One thing Star Wars has always had is a phenomenal soundtrack. Every other film had a standout moment, at least one, sometimes well more than that. This movie, I can't remember any of the music, and I don't know if that's because of the pacing. Like I said, moments don't really breathe. This doesn't feel like a space opera. This feels like space adventure film. You don't have moments like Luke staring out at the twin sunset. You don't have, or even the prequels had these things. The scene where Anakin and Padme, the song Padme's Rumination, look up that scene. That scenes like that just don't occur in this film, and that it's really missing. That really detracted from the Star Wars experience, in my opinion. But having said that, because of the way the film is edited, I don't know how the soundtrack holds up on its own. Maybe there's some hidden brilliance there that just wasn't allowed screen time. So I'm curious about that. And I also want a second viewing to reabsorb that with, potentially so anyway. So yeah, it's definitely not what I hoped it would be. A very fun and engaging movie all the same. On that level, at the very least, a more successful effort than the prequels were. It's very engaging. But plot-wise, it's no more competent than those films were, in my completely honest opinion. So, there you have it. This is really just kind of me giving a unstructured, loose, review of the movie, again, because I really am not happy with how my portions of the Council of Forcecast episode turned out, and I deeply apologize for that. I'll work on a solution for that in the near future. What did you guys think of the movie? I'm curious. I haven't really spoken to too many people aside from some immediate friends, the other guys in this little Versus Club community, this Star Wars lore community that's sprung up around us all, and a few of my family members. So I am curious to hear other points of view. Absolutely. Leave video responses, leave comments, whatever. I look forward to seeing all that, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.